Today we read John chapter 2 verses 1 to 12. And today is the last and 12th day of the Feast of Christmas. Tomorrow is the Feast of the Epiphany, which churches may celebrate on the previous Sunday. It marks the arrival of the Magi as they followed the star, as recounted in Matthew chapter 2. Strictly speaking, Epiphany is a separate occasion to Christmas, although we often roll the two into one. The family are now in a house, there's no mention of a manger, and Jesus could have been up to 2 years old, as Herod, in his fear and paranoia, commanded children up to 2 to be put to death. Today the readings invite us to reflect on other occasions of Epiphany or revelation, showing. Glimpses, that is, of the real nature and significance of Jesus, as the Magi perceived him to be King, High Priest, and supreme sacrifice. John's Gospel presents us with 7 signs, not miracles, but signs, revealing his true identity and mission. This is the first, turning water into wine. The end of the narrative makes this clear when John says, Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory. And the reason? And his disciples believed in him. The signs were like clues laid out for those who were watching, those who were on the lookout, rather like the Magi watching the skies and reading the signs in the stars. Now, if you're not keen on wine or you don't drink alcohol, this won't work for you. But in a culture where wine was highly prized, where it was more highly regarded than water, where wine was thought to be a blessing from God, and to be teetotal was exceptional in those days, then this would have been a very powerful image. The transformation of water into wine showed in microcosm the transformation that Jesus would bring to the world. And the quantity, the vast and totally unnecessary quantity for the wedding party, illustrated the overflowing plenty of God's love and salvation. I love this aspect of the story. There's so much of God's love. It is just sloshed around all over the place, and it almost doesn't matter if it's not noticed, because there's loads more where that came from. There's no question of us ever reaching the bottom of God's love. We see this idea beginning in the Old Testament, when Elisha and the widow lived on a drop of oil and a handful of flour through the famine. They never quite ran out. We see it more in the feeding of the 5,000, where 12 baskets of leftovers were gathered up after everyone was full. And we see it here as something like 150 gallons of water becomes extra wine for a village wedding party. That's about 700 litres or 930 bottles of wine. You do see what I mean. The Epiphany is both a sign, a revealing, and it's hidden. The Magi seem to have been the only ones who recognised the significance of the great star, and most of the wedding guests were oblivious to the whole wine issue. As the signs continue through the Gospel, more people become aware of what is happening, but they don't necessarily believe as a result. Seeing is not necessarily believing at all. We are quite capable of not seeing what we choose not to see. We choose what to see and how to interpret it, what to make of it. And God invites us to open our eyes and see. He doesn't prise our eyes open by force. Hence, all Jesus said in this gospel about the blindness of his enemies. And hence the sign of giving sight to the man born blind, who opened his eyes and said, "Lord, I believe." A good prayer for this time of year and for every season is this one from the Psalms. Open my eyes, O Lord, that I may see the wonders of your law.